All right. Well, welcome to another episode of New Wine Uncorked, and we're coming to you live this Friday. What is it? The second Friday of October already. Believe it or not.
All right.
Wow.
Welcome
Oops,
to
that's a
another
little bit loud.
episode
Apologize
of
for that.
New Wine
I love hearing my voice trailing on. This is how life is. Sometimes we feel like we get ahead of ourselves and so then get all discombobulated, or sometimes we're trailing ourselves and trying to catch up and we get discombobulated. And it's all cool. This is how life is, the reality of life. And this is what New Wine Uncorked is all about, seeking to step into the truth of who we are, into the reality of this thing called life, building relational bridges through Jesus Christ in contemporary culture. That's what New Wine Skins is all about. That's our mission. That's our hope. And that's why we do things like this, where we sit down and we dialogue and we seek to engage one another for the chance just to come to know one another, but also so as to understand that we are all very similar and very much alike, in the sense that we have these needs and these desires that, we're trying to fulfill. We're trying to find ways in which we see this life and to live it out with great joy, happiness, fun, all these kind of things, right? And so this month presents a couple of opportunities, especially for the Christian. For each one of us here on New Wine Uncorked, we follow this dude named Jesus Christ. And so that has a huge impact and significance for our lives. And so there's this group of people called Christians. And so in the month of October, there's some melee and some conversations that go on each year because of this thing called Halloween, or these celebrations. We have celebrations every month. Thanksgiving for Americans in November. Canadians, I think, just celebrated their Thanksgiving Day of Thanks. Overseas, they have a Day of Thanks the day after the 25th in December. For Scotland, we celebrated in England called Boxing Day, where they historically would fill boxes and send to those who are didn't have the ability to go out and buy gifts for their children. So this month, though, there's always discussion. So do Christians participate in something like Halloween, or should the Christian church abstain? There's a lot of talk about the church being a counterculture, creating this counterculture. What does that look like, especially in light of, for New Wine, we have an intentional desire to engage, to embrace, to dialogue with culture. So how do you do that? Do you do that by stepping away from it, by maybe not participating with Halloween candy and the costumes, and doing something different, or completely abstaining from it, or participating in it? So what is a Christian to do? So today we're asking, to mask or not to mask? And how does that play out in today's culture for the Christian? And maybe there's many different levels as far as participation, non-participation. Is there such thing as non-participating Christian in culture? Can a Christian actually abstain? Even if we don't put on the costumes or hand out candy, can the Christian legitimately and realistically and authentically abstain from culture? So what do we do in the month of October? For me personally, I dig Halloween. I like participating. I like the fun of it. I like as we get older, I appreciate just the childness of it, and the childlike nature of it. The fact that we get to paint up, goofy pictures, images. I can put part of my face can be orange on one side and part could be yellow, and I don't have to go to a football game to be, a crazy fan. I can actually go and be a hybrid crayon, Rello, orange and yellow, something like that. I don't know, right? But it's fun. We could be creative. However, I also understand the other side of it. That some understand the history of Halloween to be dealing with darkness and gloom and death. And, the Christians have a weird kind of fascination, obsession, not like of death, because we don't call them usually funerals. We call them celebrations of life. But if you want to, anyways, that's another thing. But so how does the Christian today step into Halloween faithfully? Do we participate? Do we not? What's the take on it? What my
I don't know.
experts?
Yeah, I don't know what Christians are supposed to do, but I'll tell you this: we do Halloween. I mean, we've done Halloween. We've enjoyed Halloween for all the same things you said, Matt. And I mean, and I've gotten in discussions. What I love about it is that in the past I've gotten in discussions with people that said how bad Halloween is, and uses the Bible, and they say they never will do Halloween, blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, cool, have fun with that. And then and then the next year, they're like, "Hey, we're gonna go out for Halloween. We're gonna go trick or treating." So I just kind of, just it makes me smile, right? And I think the other thing too, I'll just toss this out. I don't know if there is a culture movement against Halloween, especially in the churches, because you know what? I just see it as repackaging. I mean, it's kind of like the church thinks, "Hey, this isn't Halloween. We don't celebrate Halloween," but it's like, so wait a minute, you're doing this on the 31st. Kids get to dress up, but they can only dress up as Bible people or Bible verses, and you're changing it from Halloween to harvest party. So it's like, I don't know what's counterculture. I don't know what's countercultural about that. So to me, it's like repackaging. So that's my feeling. When churches want to do that, that's great. But it's like, don't call it like, I don't know. It's like splashing like Crisco oil and calling it anointing oil, and and blessing it and saying, "Hey, we're doing it totally different." And so I don't know. For me though, I don't know what Christians are supposed to do. It doesn't say in the Bible, so I have no idea. I mean, I know I'm not supposed to go out and kill animals and put them on altars and junk like that. So we stopped doing that, but we just celebrate Halloween now by just going out and getting candy. And if there's a house that my grandkids, a candy I like, I send them back to that house again. So you know what? It's my chance to get free candy. So I love Halloween. I mean, my parents were married on Halloween, so it's, hey, it's a celebration. I don't know why they did it on Halloween. Maybe my dad didn't want to get my mom candy and figured this is a cheap way to do it. But Halloween, I don't know what Christians do, but you know what? We do it. We love it when our kids dress up. Yeah, so that's me.
Yeah, for a long time, I was a part of a church that did harvest parties every year. And what was cool about it is I think the church took an offering in July and took a special offering in July, and all of that money went towards the harvest party. And we would say no costumes, stuff like that. And then we'd have like all these, we had a big building, so we were using all the rooms for all these different games and stuff like that. All right. Then one year we weren't going to do the harvest party anymore because it was just too taxing on our children's church staff and all this stuff. I think it was something like that. But then like the last minute we decided to do one. And then we did a really quick offering at church and raised all this money to do it, bought all this stuff. And we didn't do all the stuff promotion we did before, no costumes. And it was, mostly limited to the kids at our church. And it ended up being, hey, this church is doing a harvest party. And the entire community came to our church. And we had all these kids. It was so crowded. It was the biggest one that we've ever had. And we still had all this, we were able to, like, with the offer we took, we were able to like supply candy and cake and all this stuff. And it was really cool. And there were costumes all over the place and everything. And I don't know if our church did one since then. that church did one since then. But I thought it was the coolest thing that, because our church, we're in a neighborhood, but we weren't necessarily as connected to the neighborhood. And then when we just said, hey, we're going to do this harvest party, just seeing the community response and all the kids come out and all these people that were unfamiliar with our church just got connected with our church. At least we're aware of our church going forward. And so I thought it was a cool thing. Historically, my family has always done Halloween. My daughters have gone trick-or-treating, all that kind of stuff. So it's fun. It's something we do. I don't, Matt, you said you understand both sides of it. I don't necessarily understand. Understand is not the word. I get the notion of ghosts and goblins you want to stay away from, but the notion of, getting free candy from your neighbors and meeting your neighbors is something I didn't quite get. So I don't quite understand. So yeah, something that our family would do. And it's an opportunity, I feel, just to get connected with your neighbors. When I moved back into Northeast Portland 5-6 years ago, when I guess Micah was closer to 10 or 11, And we went trick-or-treating one year, and the whole thing, we were in the neighborhood, I think, for maybe just a year by then. The whole thing for me was just to get to know my neighbors, door to door, and ask them how long they lived there, and got to be familiar with a few of them. So yeah, so to me, it's a cool little practice to get to know your guys. I wouldn't call it like a spiritual formation thing. I just call it, cultural fun, if we want to put like an official title on it or something. But it's just it is just fun. And yeah, that's why I enjoyed it.
So Phil, I mean, that's pretty cool though that the community would like attend. What do you think it was? I mean, it's kind of like, like you said, like I say, everybody, we just retag it. But I mean, there was something where it was a harvest party, but like you said, no costumes or anything like that. But what drew the people, do you think? I mean, that's pretty cool.
Think because see, the prior years we just advertised it to the families in our church. We told them to bring people, whatever, but only a few did. And this one that we did, and it was last minute, kind of thrown together, and we put up signs around our building and in the neighborhood and said, hey, if you guys want to come on through, just hoping we'd get a similar crowd, because it was just last minute. So we didn't think that people would plan for it. And it was just all these kids. It was just so many kids. So I thought it was really cool. And I think just announcing it to the neighborhood, it was just a cool thing. So yeah.
I mean, we've done all that too, harvest parties, trick-or-treating. In Scotland, they definitely do take it seriously. So, I went out, I think one of the years I was a vampire, and the other year I was like a princess fairy mom. So, but and they took their, blood, gore, scary things, I guess, very seriously. Spirits, but as Christians, don't we already acknowledge the spiritual world? Like, I guess maybe that makes it scarier for us, because we acknowledge like ghosts, demons, like they are real. So it's not a fantasy, and it's not play, dress up, pretend. So I guess in that sense it can be scarier, because we do acknowledge that those spiritual realm is very real, right? But I've always celebrated Halloween. I would come down to dinner dressed up. Like I love dressing up. I have a dress up bin, 23 years old. I'm going to take every opportunity I can to play dress up. And so I don't know. It's fun. Like you said, Phil, it's a great way to get to know your community. We live in an apartment complex, and so it's really cool to see these kids that live here, dress up and come around, and now we get to pass out the candy, and now with a kid, we get to go, we have an extra excuse to go trick-or-treating and go around and get to know the people that we live around, the community that we live in. So it's a cool way to do that. It's an easy way to just say hi, and this is who I am, who are you, like, nice to meet you. I think that's a really cool aspect. I remember in Scotland, it was definitely a community thing. Like, even with all the blood and guts and gore, it was cool because we got to go around, and it was like the entire neighborhood. We lived in a cul-de-sac, and it was like the entire cul-de-sac of kids. We would go around to the houses as a group. So it wasn't just like people trick-or-treating in the neighborhood. We would just gather together and go around, and it was super cool. Some of the houses got really into it and like set up like their entire house was themed, and so we got to go through their entire house. It's just, I've always felt it was a great way to interact with others and kind of get to know them better. It's fun. It's super fun. It's free candy, dress up, be creative. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the reason I bring about, because we have participated, actually, that I don't think in my life there's been a year where we haven't, we've never purposely abstained from it. And the reason I bring it up is because of the spiritual side of things, that I do want to acknowledge that there is a spiritual realm, that in Christianity, we do pray for protection, from evil spirits, from Satan's minions. Like, so I do take that serious. My question always is, so when people want to, if their concern is that, because all of us have acknowledged that the one side of it is fun, super fun. Biblically and spirit, theologically, my question is, but if we don't understand possibly do we need to understand historically how things came about? Because it's a both and. For all of us, we celebrate, we have fun, but we acknowledge that, okay, if it starts to get like, there's a certain level that we wouldn't participate with, even with dressing up and all that stuff, which is make believe. This is, I think, where the consistency for the Christian, why I wonder, is because we participate with Christmas. We know that Jesus wasn't born on the 25th. Okay. So yeah, I know. Sorry, Jim. Sorry. And we know that Christmas for Christians isn't centered around this dude named Santa Claus, right? We understand. And so we acknowledge, and yet a lot of Christians still go through with Christmas. They still go through with gifts for some reason, right? Like, why do we give gifts to one another? There's no birthday. It's not my birthday, it's Jesus's birthday. And so on your birthday, Phil, I didn't give gifts to Jim and to Kayla, we celebrated you. So on Jesus's birthday, it's silly why we give gifts to one another. So we do that. We don't question that. And then on Halloween, though, a lot of those folks who do jump into the Christmas giving and the gift giving then abstain from Halloween because they say, I'm not sure. And so that's why I want to ask the questions, because for me, consistency is the one thing that allows the world to see that we believe in this message. And Jesus is God incarnate. God theoretically puts on a mask, a costume called flesh, and comes and lives amongst us, with us, for us, to show us something. Would Jesus, I don't know, the festivals of the first century, we read in the Bible that Jesus was always amongst the people, always in the crowds. The apostles were, and in my theology classes and my Bible classes, we talk about the Christian life today. When we read the letters of Paul and the words of Jesus, does our 21st century brain even have the ability to comprehend what was going on there? Because when he talks about suffering for the sake of the gospel, most of us look at our lives and go, I didn't get my second latte today. So you're right, there is a lot of suffering. And then the rest of us go, ha, 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 we understand you're joking. But the reality is do we suffer? And then, so there's that aspect. And then there's these things that we could participate in. And I think because there's not a form of suffering, if I go participate with my neighbors with Halloween, we're having fun, and we go, wait, maybe that's not the Christian life, because that's kind of fun with non-believers. I think Jesus had more fun with the so-called non-believers when he went to their festivals and their parties and stuff like this. And he's just like, woo, he wasn't turning the tables when he's going and sitting at the dinner with this supposed sinners, the tax collectors. So I just wonder sometimes if we get too Christian, that sounds weird, too Christianized, that we forget Jesus in the mix of it. And so the scandal and the offense of who Christ is has now left ours. And so we use him as an offense for society, and it offends them so much that they run away from us. But his offense is coming to us and saying, you're not in the center. It's not about you. It's about me. So what does that mean? And I think the more we get Christianized, we almost forget the Christness of that Christianization.
Yeah, a couple of things. So, all right, I'm going to say something in a second, but Matt and Kayla, I would love to hear a story from Scotland around Halloween. So just have that in your mind. Just deliver that sometime during our conversation. But yeah, what's the old phrase? You become so heavenly minded that you know earthly good. Like that's something that could be applied here, where we become so Christianized that we become less Christ-like. Now it's tough because we're having a conversation about Halloween and talking about Christ-likeness, right? But But the notion that, yeah, we celebrate Christmas and don't necessarily celebrate Advent. I was an adult, well into an adult before I even knew what Advent was. Celebrate Easter, don't celebrate Lent. I was an adult before I even was aware of what Lent was and my growing up as a Christian. And so yeah, we do have celebrations that we do celebrate as Christians, but then we celebrate these cultural holidays, Christmas and Easter. So it seems as if Halloween would just fit, but then yeah, the ghosts and goblins, the spiritual realm, those kind of things. And so I think we should just flip it the same way we flip Easter and flip Christmas. Just, we do the things that we do. So I've never been against calling it a harvest party, because I guess I understand that part of it, going with no costumes and doing it as just as a celebration that we do, an excuse to have a party with our neighbors. But then yeah, I think that's the way we want to approach it. But the larger conversation as to whether or not Jesus would participate in something like this, whether or not it's, we're not even necessarily intentionally celebrating with our unsaved friends and family when we're doing this. We're just celebrating family. We're just not even thinking, we don't have that in our category. And I think we should have we should use it, flip it. It's Halloween, we should flip it and do something intentional during Halloween. Because the example I brought up earlier with the neighborhood kind of showing up at this church, this is an incredible opportunity for evangelism to talk about what we do. So I think we should take it as an opportunity and flip the holiday and make it something that we use effectively as an outreach for communities that can do something like that. So yeah.
I mean, I dig the outreach. I think the outreach is crucial. It is interesting because celebrating life should be right. I mean, we have celebration of life services when someone goes to be with the Lord, or where we're not sure when their life comes to an end. We want to celebrate their life. And it seems like this would be one of those ways, though, we could celebrate people's lives when they're actually living. We can celebrate together. And I would much rather have the churches actually dialoguing about this, so as to have small groups maybe during September where you get people in a room who have differing views, because I want to embrace young Christians as well as older Christians in their walk to figure out, well, where are you at? Because to take into account that if I've lived 20 years this way, for instance, this will be a segue. The first year we were in Scotland, our neighbors, this group of teenagers, and they were wonderful. There was kids that were the age of our kids, but then there was a group of children that were older, and they fully befriended. The one thing I really, really appreciated about our time in Scotland, in our area, was the communal aspect. The Scottish people, just like the Irish, and Jim, too, with the Hawaiian, like very communal. It was beautiful. That was the biggest shock to us, because we thought we understood community, because coming out of the church who breeds this mindset of, oh, we're communal. And then when we got to people who actually lived communal, we were like, whoa, maybe we're not as people loving as we thought, And so the first Halloween, our neighbor kids, they came down and they actually asked their children, like, hey, do you want to participate with us? And we thought, well, what do you mean? Well, their thing was creating gashes and wounds, and like the most realistic, like two of our neighbor friends, they're twins. And the girls the idea is who could get the gnarliest looking, like, and so they would take these, like, hey, they come down and they show us, and they see, like, and that was their thing, is they wanted to be gross. And so at first we were like, whoa, this is kind of, but then what my wife and I got a chance to do is it gave us, they were coming to us. They actually invited us into their celebrations. They did not care where we were from. We were brand new in the neighborhood. They just invited us to celebrate with them and to go along. And so it was automatically an opportunity for my wife and I. The grossness and the bloodiness for us was like, because I think Kayla was, 10 or something, 11. And so we were like, but we got a chance to talk to our kids about it too. Like the differences, because in the States, when Kayla first went, when she was little, it was all about princessy stuff and beauty. And so then we got a chance to talk to her about like just the differences within people groups, but then we got to talk to the parents as we were all watching our kids do this and helping them out and hearing about their customs. And they were actually very surprised, like that we were Christian, because a lot of their reaction from Christians was, whoa, pull back and complete separation. So it was quite interesting. I mean, I think one year, though, Kayla did go as a princess, she did go as a vampire, but I think one year maybe you went like as a princess like vampire killer or something like that, where it was like a combination then of one year our son went as like a crusader, donning though like a toy gun, and he was all bloodied and stuff. It was beautiful though. It was like, because then each year went, then there was more and more of a hybrid where they allowed our children to then speak into their practices, and then they spoke into our children's practices. And I thought it was beautiful. I'm like, this really is living it. We had to make space though. We had to prepare ourselves like, oh wait, our way is not the right way. Our way is not the only way. And so at least for us, that was cool.
And the conversation around evangelism, it goes that way, where how do you make space in your life for other people? Because we're asking them to make space in their life for us. We don't have the same, if we're approaching them and they've never heard of the church at all, and we're asking them to consider Jesus Christ in their life. Yeah, we need to have some skin in the game. We need to demonstrate that we're willing to have some space, create some space in our life for them. So yeah, the intentionality of using these spaces to make friends, to create space, all these kind of things it's just part and parcel with how we need to do evangelism more in the church, and just how to, introduce people to Jesus and the way we do things. Welcome to our world kind of thing, and say that we can flip these things and yeah, we can Christianize them per se, but we can do things to create space. So yeah, I like that.
And you know what, Phil, just responding to that before Kayla and Jim jump in here, we don't think about the experience that we invite people into in the church. It might be just as offensive, or however you want to say, like, so we think the guts and the gore and the ghoulishness might be an offense towards our purity or things. But think about when we bring people into a church, there's 100, 200, 300, 500 people, all focused on whatever up front. This group of people, typically when we bring them in, they all have instruments. Cool. So this is a concert. Not really, because when we raise our hands, we're not raising them out towards those people. We're actually raising them up towards this up here. Okay. Oh, so God's up there? Well, not really. He's all around here. Okay. So, and then we sit, and this dude up front is going to pray over our lives, but I don't know him. So how's he praying for me? And wait, what are we praying to? This spirit that just is around, for what? Because this dude became a baby, but he was a guy. And then he goes into this woman who then is birthed, but she never gets pregnant from her husband. And I'm like, okay, so wait a minute. Before we start to condemn like the weirdness and the of others' messages, let's just be careful what we are expecting people to believe, and that we expect them to think that we are actually thinking rightly. And a lot of our message doesn't sound what would be considered sanity within a psychological realm. A lot of psychologists would say, oh, we need to, so just, I mean, that's a lot of space too, going into the making of the space to our own practices, that we expect, like Phil, you're saying. I mean, that's brilliant for us to remember is, well, what do we expect people to be okay with Christianity?
Oh yeah, and that same person that was born without a father, that's earthly. Yeah, he died on public display in front of everyone, and then came back to life 3 days later and lives in the hearts of the people that follow him.
I mean, because what if
and we eat his
yes,
flesh and drink his blood, regularly.
It seems like it's I mean, theoretically, if we really wanted to get to, I mean, because what if I was Jesus, like, and then if I pretend to be Jesus, or one of the apostles, and we have blood, I'm Paul with the blood soaked clothes. What is that? That's Stephen's clothes. So again, the story that we step into for Christianity is not like this purified, sanitized, clean. I mean, dude, go read some of the stories with Ham and Noah and, I mean, David even, so it's like,
Or just
and
read the Bible. Like every chapter has a crazy story in it. Like, I mean, I guess read the Old Testament. I guess the New Testament. No, because you got
yeah,
Stephen. We have so many crazy
cutting
stories.
off the ear from Peter. I mean, that
Yeah.
seems that would have been pretty gruesome. I think if you would have seen someone's appendage just sliced off. And yet, I don't want to make light of, like, I want us to wrestle with this, because I know that there are many people of faith who go, okay, but what about this? I'm coming out of a past of Wiccan. I'm coming out of a past of sorcery and witchcraft. Then yes, I'm not going to go do my ministry in the bar if I've come out of 20 years of alcoholism. I'm not going to go do my ministry, in the casino if I had 15 years of so being mindful. But this is why the communal aspect is so essential, because then I get to partner with one of my Christian brothers and sisters who has thought through this, who is walking through this, and I get to walk with them. And oh, by the way, that's this thing called discipleship. And that's what Jesus says before he does something else crazy, is just lifts up, elevates, and goes, oh, by the way, make disciples of me, my Father, and the Spirit. Yes, three of us, not three gods, three of us, one God, right? Because this is the most same thing.
But I think overall, just thinking through it, and wanting to be intentional in, well, do I or do I not? And how do I, whether it's Thanksgiving, Halloween, Christmas, whatever holiday it is, or event even, if you're thinking through it and you're being that intentional, like that in and of itself says, you're trying to be faithful to living out your faith in who Jesus is and how he does want us to live. How, what does that look like, right? So having that thought process is not a bad thing. Wrestling with it is a good thing, because it just means that you are trying to authentically live out your faith in the midst of society in today's world, right? We are living in the world. We are called to live in it, not of it. What does that look like? What does that look like in the context of Halloween? So wrestling with it is a good thing. And I think, you're right. Like, there's a lot of new age stuff that can be, it can feel like it's got you in a chokehold. I know a lot of people personally who have come out of that, where it was a lot of like tarot cards and crystals, and these are the things that will heal you, and that can be entering into that realm of Halloween can be kind of like triggering almost if you have come out of that. And so there is that aspect, but I also think that, seeing it as a full picture, right? Like when we read the Bible, yeah, the cross was a horror scene. When we, it was a massacre, it was a murder. So when we do get into the whole picture, right? Like when we're reading scripture, we are reading a lot of blood, guts, and gore. And that's just the reality of the Bible, which is kind of crazy to say. But so there's that side too, just being intentional and just being like thinking through your decisions, I think is a good thing no matter what. Saying, how do I live my faith authentically? That's always a good thing. But there's two sides, the community and the fun of it. I mean, in Scotland, I also think a cool thing that our neighbors did, they prepared us. They didn't let us go. Like, it was a different culture. We never gone trick-or-treating in Scotland. It's a whole different thing. You have to be ready with a joke. And so, and it has to be memorized. You can't just pull out a slip of paper and like, oh, what joke? No, you have to like have it memorized. And so they came over beforehand and we all got ready together, and it was like weeks of preparation. Okay, they had to perfect their fake cuts and stuff, so that is art, by the way. But so we, there was a lot of planning, which meant we were hanging out all the time and like planning this and having fun and like oh, what are you going to be? What are you going to be? Oh, how are you going to do this? And we would make our costumes. Like, there's no like going out and like just buying, a package pre-made. That was not, we made our costumes. So we sat there together and like would make them. And then they were like, okay, here's how it's gonna go. You gotta have at least 3 jokes. We can't all have the same one. So let's have like, I think we got like a list of like 10 together for the whole group of us. And we would rotate through them. And we sat down and we memorized all 10 jokes, because in order to get candy, or they gave out money too, you had to tell a joke. So they would be like, trick or treat, and you would have to respond with a joke. If you didn't, you didn't get anything. But we weren't ill prepared. We weren't caught off guard, just because we were the Americans in the neighborhood. They brought us in and they were like, here's how it's going to go. Let's prepare you, you that way you participate, you get candy too. So that was really cool. And there was no house turned us away. No house was like, oh, new kids. Oh, and the first year, yeah, we were like, I think my brother was like a Jedi and I was like the Princess Fairy mom. So we definitely stood out from the group that first year, and nobody cared. We were still just as invited to participate, just as welcomed. So it's really cool.
Yep. Yep. Jim, I know that see, this is the thing though, as age goes, okay, Jim, and I don't know if this is true with you, Phil, as well, but as you get older though, have your views changed when it comes to societal things, whether it be Valentine's Day, whether it be, birthdays, okay? Because there's no biblical yes, we should celebrate each other's lives, but nowhere in the Bible does it say pause on the day of your birth. And yet we do that. We give gifts and things like that. There are a lot of practices that we do that I wonder if we even think about. But as you've gotten older and, Jim, with the grandkids and things like that, like, I don't know, have things changed? And has it changed because your faith has gotten stronger and grown, or because as we get older, sometimes we don't want to fight anymore, and so we are very, very intentional on the battles in which because when you're in your 20s, you're like, dude, I'll fight, I'll be content, let's do this. And so I'm just curious, as we've aged, do you think it's changed? Do you think, what has come into your life where you rethought your participation in these kind of things? Because you lead a church, you are a pastor as well. Same thing with you, Phil. And so you lead church. So you have to have a broader perspective beyond just your own personal. So how has that evolved over the years? And yes, I use the word evolution, because I do believe that Christians still have evolution. So we're going to stretch everything here.
I mean, I think so, but I think for the most part, when I think of Halloween when I was a kid, it was fun. I mean, it was just good fun. You got to dress up. You went out and got candy. Your parents were with you. You went with your buddies. You went to school. You got to share your costumes. And so for me, Halloween was fun, right? And so and that's kind of how it's always been for me. I mean, and then when people started to kind of add too much spiritual. So like for me culturally, I mean, indigenous people, we stand like 1 foot in the spiritual and 1 foot not in the spiritual, right? And so this whole thing about, we know that there's this battle between good and bad, good and evil. We grew up understanding there were certain things that you did and didn't do, and there was spirits that were involved with those things, right? So, I mean, we grew up with that. We knew that, but then it's kind of like this, I guess for me, for Halloween, it's kind of like, I don't know. It's like this, it's almost like a celebration, right? I think celebrations and ceremonies are important, right? And so I think Halloween can be seen as a ceremony, right? It's this time of, like you said, it's just for kids to be kids and even for adults to be kids, right? So I think what happens is like, there's these ceremonies that we have. Halloween's a ceremony in the Western culture. Thanksgiving's a ceremony, although we know what the history of that is, but there's still Native Americans that participate in that ceremony because there is the sense of Thanksgiving. So we have these ceremonies. I mean, Easter, like you talk about Easter. I mean, Easter egg hunts. Churches have Easter egg hunts where Easter egg is kind of like the sign of worshiping the fertility god. It's like, really? I mean, it's so, but so to me, it's like the heart of the celebration is gathering of these people. Who cares if it's a fertility god? I mean, they're like frickin' Easter eggs. Let the kids have fun with you. I had fun with it. And so I guess there's this part of me that's, I mean, would Jesus go to a Halloween party? Sure, because it's cultural. I mean, it's engaging culture. Would he shut it down? I don't think so. Right? I mean, because like you said, he's a friend of sinners and saints. Would he say what some of the concerns are? Absolutely. I mean, I had a friend that was this person, they encountered this Wiccan, right? And they were like, oh, watch out. I've got these spirits behind me and I can, do you harm. And my buddy was like, you know what? There's this like one spirit that I know that can like outdo your spirit, And he's like, what? It's like, yeah, it's like Jesus. He goes, Jesus. And then he gets in this conversation with this Wiccan instead of saying, oh, you're evil. But he's like saying, dude, I've got this spirit that's like, could take your spirit on. And so, I just think we just find opportunities to learn. But I guess growing up, like my kids, I loved Easter. My kids, they are not Easter, but Halloween. My kids, they weren't that into Halloween. I mean, my daughter does not like getting scared. My son's birthday is on the 29th, so he thinks, I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on my birthday, right? And I was more grieving the fact that they wouldn't go trick-or-treating. I mean, it's kind of like, let's go 4 more houses. No, I want to go home now. It's like, shut up, ring the doorbell, give me more candy. But to me, it's not like, I don't know, you just go with the culture. And I understand. I think we need to understand. We need to be in conversation when people say, what is it about Halloween? Oh, there is a dark side, right? I mean, there are times where people use this as an elevation, but the reality is there's spiritual attacks going on all around, right? And then I think about the day after, because we're so, the day after in Mexico, they have the Day of the Dead. I mean, they celebrate ancestors coming back and visiting them. I mean, they set tables to say, hey, let's have ancestors. I mean, for us in Hawaii, man, my cousins, my family, they go to gravesites and they have lunches. I mean, they'll Hawaiians will set up picnic baskets and sit in cemeteries because of that connection. So, Halloween, I will not, if somebody is wrestling with it and says, I don't think I should do this, I'm not going to say, you're really messed up. You're just over, I'll give them their space. I honor that because of, they have done the research, and I'm not going to mock and say, oh, come on, it's no big deal. It's a big deal. It's a spiritual thing. So I think for me, when I look at things like this, it's, I think there is a caution. I think the sad thing, I think though, when I drive through my neighborhood is the commercialization of it. That's what really, people are spending so much money decorating their freaking yards, where I'm thinking, what, we're in a time where gas prices are going up. I was looking at, Texas, I think there's like 18% of people that are living in apartments are using credit cards to pay for it. And so I'm thinking, why are people spending, that's a lot of money, these inflatables and stuff like that, to have their yards filled to scare, I'm like, what is, and so I think that, that's what I don't like about Halloween. That's what I don't like about Thanksgiving. That's what I don't like about Christmas, is the commercialization of it all, right? I mean, we didn't need that. So, Halloween, it's Halloween. And people have a hard time, if people in my church would say, we shouldn't be doing Halloween, I'm like, okay, that's good for you, but I'm not going to preach that, or, so I'm not going to get up and say, oh, come on, let's just enjoy it. I'm not even going to address it, because I think people just people are smart enough,
Yeah.
So,
And
that's my rant, but.
No, and I think for the Protestants, remember, we have a split from the 1600s between Catholic and Protestant. And I think too many Protestants, which is the other side, right? Lutheran, Episcopal, Baptist and the like. I think too many of them, they hear Halloween is the night before All Saints Day. All Saints Day is the Catholic Church celebration. It's Catholic. Go look at the language, man. Catholic means Greek, is the Greek for the universal church. So when we say the Catholic celebration or the Catholic church, we're talking about the universal church, the saints that have gone. So that's where I appreciate these celebrations as a moment for the church to pause and understand historically what has happened and why have Christians paused and actually said, hey, wait, what is culture doing? Because like you're saying, Jim, they were so communal that they didn't even have to address it because they were doing life together already. And so I would agree that if you're a Christian who celebrates and you're buying the big blow-ups, ask yourself, well, wait, what if I took this and celebrated with my community by actually then going and blessing some of the less than families who couldn't even buy candy or outfits, like we could get together and have families and say, hey, let's create costumes together. Because a lot of times I think that as Christians, we think these folks are not participating because they're abstaining, but they're not participating because they can't afford it. And so their kids, because like you're saying, Jim, it's so commercialized that where when we were in Scotland, making the outfits was that was expected. And if you had a pre-made costume, you were inauthentic. Whereas here, it's like you have to go buy your costume to be authentic because everything is commercialized. So, I mean, and that's just we'll talk about that next week, the commercialization of Christianity, right? But I think you're right, man. In understanding the church did have a reason for this. Why wouldn't we celebrate the lives of those who have gone before us? Why not? We are historically, the church is. So they have gone before us, but they're also there with us because this eternality thing. And so I think I would just rather pause regardless of where we're at and go, I need to be in my community. So if you don't have someone to discuss this with, that to me says, why? Ask yourself, if you don't go, wait, I'm going to go talk to my church community and you go, I don't have a church community. That to me is more of the issue than the fact that you celebrate or don't celebrate Christmas or Halloween. Is we need to be doing this in dialogue right here, because when we get off, the four of us can still and will continue to dialogue with one another because we are communal. We do life together. And I think that's primarily what my hope is regardless of where you land, wearing mask, no decorations, ton of decorations. Are you discussing though with those in your life? Do you have a community group where you actually wrestle and work through these things? I think for me, that's what I would be asking myself is, can I even dialogue with someone? Who do I go to? If it's Google, step back and go, why?
And I was just thinking, I don't know what the answer, maybe there's an answer to this, but even with, just with the economy and everything the way it is, I mean, I wonder if some kids that are trick or treating, I mean, that's literally they're gathering food for their parents. I mean, is this because they can't afford a meal? So that, I mean, as crazy and as wild as it sounds, there's some people probably just thinking we're going to just have to live off of candy bars and water for a while. I mean, is there a way that as a church, as followers of Jesus, to use this opportunity of Halloween to somehow maybe say, how are you, I mean, do we gather food? Do we, is there some way we can hand out food to be able to help bless families? And maybe that's, maybe that's the part of the Halloween spirit, right? It's, people, kids getting candy, but maybe, maybe it's somehow getting food. I like what you said. I thought Boxing Day was just everybody puts on gloves and just goes at it. And
they do.
Candy. But man, what a great thing, Boxing Day. I mean, to be able to box things up, just have a day, say, let's. I mean, I know church. We do it always. Like Christmas. Phil and I talked about this whenever people say, hey. I remember the rescue mission. Hey, we'd like to come with, Thanksgiving or Christmas. They're like, man, we get on the waiting list. But they said, but you know what? The other 50 weeks we could use people, right? And so I think that but but I just just dawned on me. I mean, are we in a society right now where people that the kids that come to the door and trick or treat for candy, that might be the meal for their parents? I mean, that's heartbreaking. I mean, those are the kind of things maybe we should be considering and thinking about.
Yeah, and for some kids, this is the only time ever they feel normal because they get a candy bar like the rest that they see. They get these things that they never can have because it's just not even a thought for their parents. And so, I mean, that I agree with Jim. I hope all churches are wrestling with that. how can we use this opportunity when we know people are going to come onto our campuses, if we do trunk or treat or something like that, to really, really get to know those families? Like, can we as a church pray so that those families that are coming in, the Lord will make known to us which of those families need to come back next week and the week after, where we don't do trunk or treat, we actually do meals, meals and blankets or something like that, where we meet our community, and that's what a great thing, and so over the next couple of weeks, for everyone who's watching this, who's taking this in, if you do have a belief in Christ, one of the things that we should be doing is praying for the sake of this world. And so this is a call out for each one of us. And the four of us are going to challenge ourselves, and we're going to commit to this, praying for churches on the 31st, that we're going to use this. The Lord presents opportunities for the church to be evangelistic. I know a lot of people, that's a naughty word nowadays, to go evangelize your community. This is an opportunity where Christians don't even need to go out. As much as I don't like requiring people to come to the church, I think the church should be going out. This is an opportunity where people readily come to the parking lots of the churches. And so might we be mindful over these next couple of weeks to be praying for the hearts and the souls of the church, so as to be open and embracing, so that we can then be praying for those folks to come onto our campuses, and that the Lord will create opportunities for us to see the people in our community who really do have need for basic food, clothing, and community, right? So we totally appreciate you joining us for this, another edition of New Wine Uncorked. It's New Wine, New Wineskins, where we're seeking to build relational bridges, contemporary culture through Jesus Christ. And through the likes of Halloween or Christmas or Easter, events in your neighborhood, opportunities for us to be the truth of Jesus Christ, the way, the truth, and life, which is love. And this world we know needs love. And so we're stoked that you took some time out to join us once again for this edition of New Wine Uncorked. And till next week, on behalf of Jim and Phil and Kayla, I'm Matt. We'll see you on the flip side. Have a good one.